Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Azure services. So we Cloud and Law Tech community having an experience of for 11 years training professionals in different technologies like AI, DevOps, Linux, and much more. So please do follow our community and also please do subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't done earlier so that you don't miss any future updates. Okay, let's go to this session. Okay, myself 𝐂𝐥𝐨𝐮𝐝 𝐓𝐞𝐜𝐡𝐧𝐨𝐥𝐨, and I work with Cognizant Technology Solutions, and I am an Azure and AMGAT certified IT engineer. So if any one of you have missed my previous sessions on which we have taken last 3 weeks, so we have discussed about the virtual machines and how to create a web server from the virtual machines, and also we have seen about the disks, how to create our own disk and manage our encryptions. And also we have seen the scale out and scale in and also about Azure availability sets and availability zones. Okay, so if any one of you have missed my previous sessions, please go and you can have a look at my previous sessions in the YouTube in Cloud and Louder Technologies YouTube. Okay, so now let's go ahead. And today we are going to discuss about another service, which is called as Azure Web App. Okay, so we are going to discuss about Azure Web App Service or Azure App Service. Okay, so let's get started. So what is Azure Web App Service and why do we need it? For example, let's say you have one application. Just a moment. Okay, now let's say you have one application. Okay, your web application has written in programming languages something like .NET or .NET Core, Java, Ruby. So whatever the programming languages your developers or you are comfortable with, if your application was written in one of these supported programming languages, and if you want to host your application onto the web server, right? So if you want to host your application onto the web server, usually you have two options to go with. Either you can go ahead and create your own virtual machine and you can configure the web server on that virtual machine, and you can come and deploy your web application on that virtual machine, right? So by doing this, you are responsible for taking care of all the infrastructure, all the underlying infrastructure, right? You need to decide, you need to take care of the CPU, RAM, and you need to take care of the configuration of the web server, and you need to take care of everything if you are going with this method. So along with this, Azure offering another service that is called as a Azure Web App Service or a Azure App Service. So what you can do is, if you are going with Azure Web App Service, then Azure Web App Service by itself, it will manage the underlying infrastructure. It means, so whatever the creation of the virtual machines and configuring it as a web server, so all those things until everything will be taken care by the Azure itself, or it will be taken care by the Azure App Service itself. Okay, so what you just need to do is you need to create, you need to program your application, and you can just go ahead and host your application on the Azure Web App Service, Azure Web App. Okay, so you don't need to bother about the underlying infrastructure or anything. You don't need to bother about creating the virtual machines, anything. Okay, everything will be taken care by the Azure App Service itself. So if you are going with creating by yourself a virtual machine, then that is called as a infrastructure as a service. So you are creating your infrastructure and you are managing everything. That is an infrastructure as a service. So if you are going with the Azure Web App, that is called as a platform as a service. So why it is called as a platform as a service means whatever the underlying infrastructure it is that needs to be taken care of, that will be managed by the Azure App Service itself. So you have been given a platform ready to just host your application and start using it. Okay, so that is why this Azure Web App or Web Service is called as a platform as a service. So there are few advantages going with the Azure Web App. So let us discuss some. So if you see here, the main advantage of going with the Azure Web App is you don't need to manage any underlying compute infrastructure, right? So all the infrastructure and the configuration of your web server, everything will be taken care by the Azure Web App. And also it is offering you auto scaling and security features. So you can go ahead and configure auto scaling, and if you want your website to be more secure, you can enable the security certificates as well. Okay, so along with that, it is also offering you a DevOps capabilities, which includes the continuous deployment. So while configuring your Azure Web App, you will be having an option to go ahead and choose the continuous deployment, so that if you want to manage your code as a continuous deployment, you can do that as well. Okay, so sometimes there are some vendor-based applications, or if you are creating some custom applications, sometimes they will not be able to compatible with your Azure Web App. So those times you have no option except going with your creating your own own virtual machine, which is an infrastructure as a service. So if you want to manage from everything from end to end, if you want to manage all the configuration, underlying configuration, then yes, obviously you can go with infrastructure as a service. Like creating your own virtual machine. If you don't want to take the headache of all the underlying infrastructure, you just want a platform where you can go just deploy your program and see how it is working or test on that, you can directly go with the Azure Web App. Okay. So now, before moving ahead, I want to tell you about another service which is called as a Azure Service Plan. Okay, so if you are going to create any Azure Web App or the Azure App Service, there will be another resource, Azure Service Plan, which will get automatically created along with your web app. So what this Azure Service Plan will do is, it will decide what features that your web app is going to be hosting. So the features that actually web app is having, based on the plan you are choosing, those features will be enabled or those features will be disabled for you. Okay, and also it is responsible for billing. So whatever the usage you are doing with this Azure Web App will be billed to you. So through this Azure Service Plan. Okay, so this is also one of the important resources. So it is a separate, independent resource that will be created along with your Azure Web App. Okay, now let's go ahead and see. Okay. So now I'm just going to the page azure.microsoft.com because I wanted to show you the different plans available for the Azure Web App. Okay, so this is Azure Service Pricing page. You can just browse azure.microsoft.com. In that you will find this one. So in Azure Service Pricing, if you come down, so you can see there are different types of tiers it's actually offering you. So one is free tier, one is shared, basic, standard, premium, and isolated. So these are the plans, these are the Azure service plans that are available for you, which you can choose among based on your requirement. Okay, so if you see free and shared plan, so it's offering you of creating web applications or mobile applications or API applications. You can create up to 10 web apps. If you see for the shared one, you can create up to 100 web apps. So how many web apps maybe you are creating with the one Azure service plan, it will be allocated, the disk space that will be allocated to store your web applications. If you are going with the free plan, only 1 GB is available for you. If you are going with the shared plan, only 1 GB is available for you. So whatever the web applications that you are going to host on that, the disk space available for serving that web applications is only 1 GB if you are going with this plan. So, but if you are going with the basic, standard, premium, isolated, so you will find based on that, obviously the size will be increased, and however, obviously you will be charged for the highest amount, right? So the limitation with this free and shared plans is, if you come down, you can see here, there is a 60 CPU minutes per day if you are going with the free. It means that the CPU minutes, the CPU, underlying CPU they're offering you is only for this 60 minutes. That means whatever the web applications you are hosting on your web app, if you are going with this plan, that will be up and running only for the 60 minutes per day. So the same wise, if you are going with the shared one, it will be available for you only for the 240 CPU minutes per day. But if you come to the other plans, basic, standard, premium, and isolated, you can see there is no particular time limit or particular time slot that is available for you to manage this CPU. So there is no limitation if you are going with the highest plans. Okay, so in the same way, there are other features if you come to the basic, let's say, if you are, let me take, so if you are coming with the basic, if you see here, the maximum instances that you can create with this basic plan is up to 3, right? So here we are saying that the maximum web applications you are able to create is 10 in the free tier, 100 in the shared, and unlimited in the other plans, right? So what's the difference between these instances of this web app, and what is this instances of this up to 3, up to 10? So to explain this, let's say if you have your one application, okay, I'm naming it as application 1. If you are having another application and it is application 2, okay, and you are having another application that you are going to host and it is called as a, let's say, application 3, and now you have a Azure service plan in place, okay, and your Azure service plan, you can either go with free, shared, basic, standard, premium, isolated, whichever plan you are comfortable with based on your usage, right? So whatever the application you are hosting onto your app service is, that will be automatically hosted on the underlying virtual machine, on the underlying infrastructure, right? But you don't actually manage it directly, but it will be managed by your app service, right? But whatever the application you are hosting, that will be hosted on the underlying one virtual machine. Let's say if you have hosted another application, and also if you are hosting another web app, so what happens is this virtual machine at some point of time, it may not be able to handle your load which you are keep on adding, right? So what it will do is it will create another instance of the VM. So, and once the another VM is created, whatever the load that is coming, that will be distributed among your virtual machines. So this maximum instances of up to 3, up to 10, this is the underlying virtual machines. I mean, the underlying scale up of your virtual machines. So if you are going with a basic plan, the maximum virtual machines that it can scale up to is 3 virtual machines. If you are going with the standard, it can maximum scale up to 10 virtual machines. So likewise, okay. So this is the main advantage of going with the highest plans. And the other thing I wanted to tell is, if when you are deploying your application onto the app service, let's say the programming language, whatever the programming language you have selected to build your application, that should be supporting the OS of your, I mean, the operating system of your virtual machine, right? So if your virtual machine is created with a Windows operating system, then whatever the programming language you have used to create your application should be compatible with the Windows operating system. Likewise, if your application is hosted on the Linux virtual machine, then it should be compatible with the Linux virtual machine, right? So you have an option while creating your web app. You can choose the underlying operating system, whether you want to go with Windows or whether you want to go with Linux based on your requirement, based on the programming language you have chosen. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Now I'm going to show you how to create a sample web app, and we are going to test it, how it works. Okay, I'm going to the portal.azure.com. Here I have one subscription, my subscription, which is a pay-as-you-go model. And now I'm going to create one web app on the app service. So if you type web app in the search, if you type web app, this app services or the web app is the same. Okay, so if you click on that, go to the create, and you can create your own web app. Okay, so it is automatically tagged to my subscription. So whatever the charge associated with this web app will be charged me based on, via this subscription. Okay, now if you have any resource group already created, you can choose that. I don't have any, so I'm just going ahead and creating one for me. Okay, I'm naming it as RT1. So now you need to give a name to your web app, and it should be unique name. It should not have been used at any point of time and at anywhere, because it's going to be a unique name for your application. Okay, so let me give something as first web app. Okay, so my first web app. Okay, I'm giving it as like this. So I'm going to publish it as, I'm going to publish my code on this web app as a code. Okay, so this runtime stack is actually the programming language with which you have written your application. So if your application is built with the .NET, so you will be choosing this .NET. So if your application is written in Python programming language, then you will be choosing Python. So based on the programming language you have created your application, you can go ahead and choose that. Okay, so as of now, I'm just going to select a .NET as a sample one, and I'm going ahead. So now, if you see operating system, as I told you sometime before, while you're creating your web app, you will be given an option of selecting the Linux operating system or the Windows operating system. So if you are choosing the Windows operating system, so it should be compatible, whatever the programming language you have written your code, that should be compatible with that operating system. So as I have selected this .NET, as you can see this is compatible with both Linux and both Windows operating system. It is now your choice on which operating system you want to host your application. Okay, so I'm going with Windows, and you can choose the region whichever you wanted to, in which region you wanted to host your web application. Okay, I'm just leaving it Central US. And now, if you see here, the app service plan. So as I told you, right, whenever you go and create your web application, it will be automatically associated with the app service plan. Based on this plan, it will decide which features should be available for your web app. Okay, so this app service plan, as I don't have any app service plan earlier, it has taken one app service plan by default. So it has created one app service plan for me. And if you see here, and it has automatically created a standard plan. So we had free, shared, basic, standard, isolated, and premium, right? So it has automatically created a standard plan, and it has created one name, right? So as of now, I don't want a standard plan. So you can go ahead in the change size, and you can change your plan which you wanted to do. If you go ahead in the dev and test, so this free and shared one will be useful mostly for development and testing purpose. Okay, so if you are going with the production, then you have to go with standard and premium ones. So if you want your isolated infrastructure, isolated networks, then you can go with the isolated plan. Okay, so if you come here, if you see this F1, this is a free tier, but the features that is available with this F1, the free plan, is only the memory. It is offering some memory, it's offering some storage, it's taking care of these things. I'm just going to host my application. If you go ahead and go to some S1, the standard one, if you scroll down, so can you see these are all the features that it is offering. It is along with the storage and the memory, it is also offering you to take the backups, to manage your traffic, and also it to scale your infrastructure, and also it is offering you some staging slots. Okay, we will discuss about the staging slots, auto scaling, all those things in some time. So I just wanted to show you all the features that it is offering. Okay, likewise, if you go to any plan, you can see all the features that plan is offering. Okay, as of now, I'm just going to select a free tier. I'm just going to apply. Now, as you can see, it has changed to free F1. Okay, now if I click on next. So deployment options. If you want a continuous deployment, then you can just go ahead and enable it, and you can give your GitLab or the GitHub repository URL here, so that if any changes happening to your source code, automatically that will be deployed to your web app, and you can test and do your testing and there. Okay, so automatically it will fetch the new code and do the deployment. So as of now, I don't want this, so I'm just going ahead and disabling it. Okay, next, if I go to the monitoring, okay, so now can you see here, enable application insights. So application insight is nothing but it's a feature to monitor your web app itself. So whatever your web app performance or everything that you can manage, you can monitor it via this application insight. Okay, as of now, I don't want to monitor my web app, so I'm just going to disable it. So if you want to, you can give any tags. I don't want it, so I'm just leaving it. Now go and create your web app. It's validating. Yes, and the deployment has started now. If you go here, you can see the submitting deployment. Okay, let's wait for a few minutes. It will not take much time. It's just 1 or 2 minutes to create this web app. Let's see what happens. Okay, now can you see here, while deploying this web app, it has automatically created one resource. Can you find it what? This is the app service one, which we have seen. I have chosen it as a free tier, right? That is that resource which was created automatically along with my web app. Okay, now if I go to the resource, this is the web app which I have created now. This is created in the location Central US. It is tagged to my subscription. So there are many features that web app is offering. So now if you go to the URL, if I'm going to copy my URL. So this is the URL of my web application. Okay. If I'm going to my browser, I'm just going to paste it and so. You see, this is the default .NET page which we have got because we have deployed a default, .NET programming, right? We have chosen a run stack as a .NET. So I have got a default .NET page. So if you want to build your application, you can build your application on top of this, and you can, with this URL, whatever the page you have designed, that will be displayed. Okay. And now, so I just wanted to discuss one scenario with you. For example, if your client is asking you to create 4 applications, okay? So you are creating 4 applications with different programming languages. So for one app, you are creating with .NET Core, and one with ASP.NET, and one with PHP, and one with Ruby, let's say. And your client is asking you, how many service plans do you need to create for managing all these applications? So what will be your answer? To do that, to understand that, what you need to do is, let's say, I'm just duplicating. Okay, let's go to home page. If I just go to create a new web app, I'm not just creating, I just wanted to show you. Okay, so now if you come here, so if you go to .NET, can you see when I selected the .NET, it has an option both Linux and Windows. So I can either choose Linux or I can either choose Windows, right? So what I will do is I will write here as it is compatible with both Linux and Windows. So it's your wish, whichever you want to use. Okay, so the next one is ASP.NET, right? So if I come here, if I choose ASP.NET, can you see here? Actually, it's having only Windows option. The Linux option is disabled. I can't select this one. Do you know why? Because the ASP programming language is only compatible with the Windows operating system. So I don't have an option with going Linux, right? So I'll just write it here as it is compatible only with the Linux operating system. Okay, so the third application they have been asked you to create with the PHP language. So now come here again. If you go PHP, so can you see it is having an option of both Linux and Windows. It means that it can be hosted on any operating system and it is compatible with both, right? So I'm just going to copy paste the same. It means that both compatible. And your fourth application is Ruby. So if you want to check that, if you want to check that, go here and choose some Ruby language. If you see here, only Linux operating system is enabled. You can't choose the Windows one. I can't choose the Windows one, right? So it is compatible only with the Linux operating system. If you don't have the basic compatibility, if you don't know the basic compatibility of the programming languages, you can just come here and see. So the programming languages, whichever is compatible with both, both will be available for you. Based on that, you can choose any one which you want. Okay, like this, you can, if you don't know, you can see which programming language is compatible with which one. So this is only compatible with Windows, right? So likewise, now if you see here, what you can do. So I am going to create, just a moment, I will take. Okay, so now I have created my 4 applications, right? This is my 4 applications with 4 different programming languages. So if you can see, there is one application that is only supported with the Linux, right? So definitely I have to create one Azure service plan with selecting Linux, because underlying virtual machines is going to be Linux of this Azure service plan. Okay, and I am going to create one more Azure service plan, and its underlying infrastructure is going to be Windows operating system. So now, I can host this app 2 on this Azure service plan, and I can host this app 4 on this Azure service plan, because it is compatible with Windows, it is compatible with only Linux, right? So when I come to the application 1 and application 3, it is compatible with both Linux and Windows. So I can go ahead and host either in here or in here. It's completely up to you based on how you want to manage. Okay, so if the question is, how many Azure service plans do you have to create for this for hosting all these applications, right? So you need 2 Azure service plans, because when you are creating the web app, when you're creating the Azure service plan, you need to give the underlying operating system, Linux or Windows, whichever you wanted to select. So all the applications, all the web apps that you're going to host on that Azure service plan will be using only that underlying infrastructure. Even though your virtual machines is scaling up, whatever based on the load, whatever the scale up is happening, that will be the new virtual machines. The scale up of virtual machines will also be created based on the the operating system which you have chosen primarily, right? So all the virtual machines, even though you have it's getting created 3, 10, whatever it may be, based on the load, that's going to be the Windows if you have chosen the Windows operating system. So definitely whatever the program you are writing, that should be compatible with this Windows operating system. Or if you're going with the Linux, same, it should be compatible with the Linux operating system, right? So now let's go ahead. Okay, so with this, before going to this log, I just wanted to show you. Okay, this is my first web app which I have created, right? So in the web application, now you have one option that is called as, let me show you. Okay, app service editor. So this app service editor will directly allows you to edit your, or to create your, to create your program or to create your application directly here in the Azure itself. So if you go here, if you click on go, so it is taking me to the online Visual Studio, where I can create my .NET pages, or I can modify the already existing one, right? If you see here, it's opening an app service editor. So whatever the default page we have seen now, so this one, when I have pasted my URL, this is the default page, right? So that default program is this one, hosting star.html. This is the default one which was created automatically, right? So now let's say if I want to create my own page. So as of now, I'm just giving a sample name. So I have given name as default.html. Okay, I'm just giving to is my first code. Let's say WhatsApp. Okay. I have just given a simple HTML command so when I have done this, it is automatically saved, right? So I don't need to go ahead and save it again. So when you start writing it, it will automatically get saved. And if you want to modify like this, the existing pages, you can go ahead and change as well. So now if I go to the URL, this is my actual URL, right? Which I have got from my web app. So if now, default.html. So I have created one page in here, right? So can you see? So this is I'm browsing from my personal laptop. Okay, so when I browse this URL and I want to browse this page, so I have given this as default.html. So this is the code which I have given there. So this is my first production code or the first version. Okay, likewise, you can add on you can design your own web pages. Okay. So now let's come back. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about something related to logging. So along this app service is also providing a feature of different types of logging. In that, few of them are application logging. It means whatever the applications you are hosting, any logs that is getting created from your application code, that will be that will be stored. And also web server logging. So whatever the traffic that is coming to your web server to access your web page, so those traffic details, those access details, that will be recorded and that will be saved. Okay. And also you can, it is also having a feature called detailed error messages. It means whatever the customer will see when the web page is not available or when some error is occurring, that pages, that messages will be stored here. So it means that sometimes when you try to access any web page, when it is not available, it will show you as a page 404 not found, something like that, right? So whatever the error that it should show to your customer, that will be saved here. Okay, and the deployment logging. So whenever you are trying to do some deployment on your, when you're deploying your web applications onto this web app, all those deployment details also will be saved. Okay, so you can, this web app is also providing you a log, live stream of your logs. Let's see how it is. This is my first web app, right? I have created. So if you go and scroll here, there should be one option called as, okay, here app service logs. If you go into that, so can you see here the application logging? It means that whatever the logs that is generating out of your application code, that will be stored. And you can see here that is automatically enabled, right? If you want, you can, but you have, if you want, it is automatically enabled, and it is going to store all this log onto your file system, on your underlying virtual machine file system. Okay, so like same wise, if you want to store your application logging not on the file system, if you want to store it on some storage account or into some other storage, then you can go ahead and enable this one, application logging blob. If you turn it on, it will ask you the storage container details, and you can give here and you can store your application logging onto the storage system. Okay, the same wise the web server logging, as I told you, whatever the traffic that is trying to access your web page or the web application, that logs will be created in the web server logging, and you can store it either in the file system, or you can store, if you have any storage account created, you can store onto the storage account as well. So as of now, I'm just enabling it down to the file system, and I'm going to give a retention period of like 7 days. I'm not going to change anything. So whatever the logs that is going to be saved on this file system, that can be viewed or that can be downloaded using these FTP protocols. Using these FTP links. Okay, so as of now, I'm just going to save. So I have enabled my application logging and web server logging. So all these logs will be stored in my file system as of now. Okay, and also you can see the log stream, the live stream, whatever is happening. So you can see here the application logs or the web server logs. You can monitor, you can do the live monitoring of your logs from this log stream. You can do both application logs and you can see web server logs as well. So can you see, this is my application, the default one or the default HTML which I have created. All that application logs is getting created here. So likewise, if you go to the web server logs, it will show you all the traffic related details. Let's say I'm going to close it, and I'm going to copy paste my URL again. Okay, so it means that I'm now trying to access my web page, right? Now, if you come to this live stream of your logs. You go to the web server logs. Can you see? So this is the new request that I have made now to access my web page. So all the traffic that is accessing your web page, that will be logged here. Actually, you can see whatever it is happening in the live. So all this data will be stored into your storage account or into the file system based on the storage you have chosen. Okay, so this is in pertaining to logs. Okay, so the next thing I want to discuss about is deployment slots. So for first, to understand this deployment slots, you need to understand, let's say if you have one application, okay, and your application version 1, you have hosted onto your web app, and that is your production. Okay, so now you have your application, you have got a new code or a new version, and also you have modified something, either you have fixed the bugs in the existing one, or you have added a new feature, whatever it may be. So you have now your version 2 code. So this is one is an updated one. Okay, so this one is updated, might be it's fixing some bugs, or it is having some new features to add your web page. So if you are going to deploy this version 2 directly into this web app, so probably there might be a chance it might not be working as expected. You need to test it before deploying any new code or a new bug fixes, right? So what you can do is, in this web app, there is an option that is called as a deployment slot. What it will do is, in the same web app, it will give you one portion. So it will give you one portion. Let's say this is called as a slot. Okay, so what you can do is, you can host your version 2, I mean your new code, to your deployment, I mean here a slot that you have created in the same web app, and you can test on it, you can do whatever you want. Once you are sure and once you are comfortable that it can go live onto your customer, you can just swap this code onto here to the production slot. Okay, this is the usage of the deployment slot. So usually Azure Web App is offering you to create up to 5 slots in each web app. So one can be used for your development purpose, for development of your code. One can be used for your UAT testing. One can be used for your performance testing, and one can be used for as a pre-prod, and one will be as a prod. So likewise, you can create different slots in the same web app. So remember, it is not the another instance of the web app. It is just a portion or a part of your same web app. Okay, so the advantage of having these slots is, you can test your code before deploying it to the production. Okay, and whatever the slot you are creating here, it will have a separate host name, and it will have a separate URL when compared to your production one. So you can access that slot directly with this available URL for that particular slot. Okay, for using this deployment slot, your plan should be either standard, premium, or isolated one. So when we have seen the features that is offered by each plan, so in the free tier we have seen only memory and the storage, right? So it's not offering you the slotting option. So if you want to use this deployment slot option, you have to choose the plan, either standard, premium, and isolated one, right? Now let's go back here. Okay, so this is my first web app, right, which I have created. So as I have created this web app, in the free tier, I cannot able to use the deployment slot options, because whatever the I have chosen the plan that is a free tier, right? So to use this deployment slot, either you should have standard, premium, or isolated one. You can go ahead and upgrade your service plan. If you go to your production, the minimum you should have is a standard one, right? So I'm choosing S1 and just apply. So likewise, you can choose at any point of time, you can change your plan, your Azure service plan at any point of time based on your requirement. Okay, I'm just updating my plan to now standard one. So if you scroll down here, you can you see the staging slots? These are the options, and you can see up to 5 staging slots can be used for your testing and the deployment purposes and to swapping. So likewise, you can create up to 5 staging slots in the one web app, and that will be available only if you are going with a standard and above. Okay, now I have created one. Upgrading service plan successful. Okay, so now if I come back. You can also change your service plans here as well. There will be an option called scale up. So if you go to the scale up, you can choose whichever the plan do you want, and you can change here as well. Okay. So now, as I have already chosen the standard one, I can go ahead and create my deployment slots. Okay, so whatever the code that was already available, that is already a production, right? That is already up and running. Now I'm going to create one, add slot. Here you can give a name to your slot. As of now, I'm giving it as a staging. So whatever my new code is coming, it needs to go to the staging and then to the production. Okay, so now here I have given name as a staging, add. So this first web app which I have created, this is the actual web app. This is the actual web app which I have created. And in the same web app, I am creating a slot in that particular app itself. Okay, so now if we close it. So this is the staging one which I have created now. If I go into it. So as I told you, can you see here? The first web app which I have created a slot in the same. And if you can see here, this is the app service, but it is a slot. It is a slot of some web app. Okay, likewise, if you see here, it has got some unique URL. The first one which I had is the first web app. Yes, this one, right? So if you can see here, there is another word that has included that is called as a staging. So this one is unique. So it is like even though if you have created the earlier one that is production, this URL is completely different. If you go copy this one and paste in your browser, so you will get just a default one because you don't have any code written over there, right? So if you come back again, so if I go to the Azure App Service Editor preview, where we have created some sample, if you go. So this one I'm going into the staging slot, right? This is the editor of my staging slot app service. So now you can see the default HTML which I have created, that is not here because that is completely isolated with compared to the staging. Even though it is in the same app, it is completely isolated with each other. Okay, so now I have only the default one, and now I'm going to create another new file here, which I'm going to call it as default.html. Okay, let's say, and I'm going to create or host my new application, which I'm going to call it as, let's say, this is my updated version of product. Okay. So this is with new features and bug fixes. Okay. So now, if I go to the staging, it's the overview. Okay. So this one. Okay. So now if I go and copy the URL of my staging URL, staging slot, can you see this is my updated version of the product? So can you understand? Now what I have done is I have created one web app. It has some URL. This is my current production. Okay, this is current production page. And now I have created one small slot in this. It has separate URL. I have my new code here. I have my updated code or new code here. It is having some unique URL. Okay, So we have done that now. So now what I want to do is all the testing, all the thing pertaining to my staging slot has done. Now I'm sure that this is working good. What now I want this to make it as a production environment. Then what I want to do is it's very simple. You can just go ahead into your staging and you can you see the option called as a swap? If you click on that, it will ask you which slot you wanted to swap with which one. So the current source one, this is the staging which I have now, which is having my updated code or updated production environment. I mean, sorry, updated production code. So this one is the current production code, right? So I can just choose that. I can just click here as a swap. So now what happening is the code, whichever is in my staging, it's going to be hosted as a production. And let me show you once it is done. Okay. So what's actually happening is this is my production code. This is my staging code. Okay. So this is current one. This is updated one. So now when I have clicked a swap, what happened is this code will be swapped here and this code will be swapped here. So now the updated this URL, whichever we are having as a production URL, with that URL, customers will be able to use the current one. And whereas with this staging environment URL, you will see the current production code, which was swapped from here to here. Okay. Swapping is successful now. I should come here. So this is my first app, right? This is the first actual production app which I have created, right? So if I go here, copy the URL. If I'm opening a new browser, I want to start it. Can you see? This is my updated version of the prod, but I am actually searching with my actual production URL. In the same way, if you go to the staging, if you go to the staging one, if you go and search the URL of that staging app, let's open here. You see, this is my first production code or the version. So whatever the page which I have created in the first prod one, that is now moved to the staging one, and whatever the updated code that I had in the staging, that has now moved to the production one. Okay. So likewise, let's say after hosting your staging, updated code into the production one, let's say if there is some issues or some bugs has been identified after posting it to the production one, then again, what you can do is you can easily restore your application just by swapping to the actual production one. Again, you can click on the swap and you can do swap again from this staging to the production. So whatever the earlier code that was available, that will be hosted into the production, and whatever the the issue code which you have now in the production, that will be again come to the staging. You can start texting on that and you can start fixing that. Okay, so it is very easy to restore your application even if something goes wrong after changing into the production. But usually it won't happen after doing all the testing. Only the code will be hosted, but still some issues might be identified pertaining only some environment issues can occur when it comes to the production, right? So during that time of situation, you can just go ahead and swap your code so that there will be no impact to your customers. Okay. So now we have seen about the deployment slot. Now let's see about the auto scaling. Same as like the virtual machine scaling which we have seen last week, in the Azure Web App Service also you can go ahead and scale up. So as I told you, when you are, for example, when you have having more customers who are accessing your web apps, right? So automatically your app service plan will have one underlying virtual machine or an underlying infrastructure, right? Whenever whenever your virtual machine is going beyond some limit with CPU or whatever the metric you are choosing, if it is going out of this assigned limit, then obviously your app service plan will automatically scale up your virtual machine to one more instance, and the load will be distributed among this. So if you, in the same way, if your load is coming more and more, then another virtual machine will be created and load will be distributed. Likewise, if you are going with the basic plan, I mean Azure Service Plan, we have multiple plans, right? Likewise, if you are going with the basic plan, then you can create a maximum up to 3 virtual machines only, right? You can scale up to only 3 virtual machines. Likewise, the other thing, if you are going with the basic plan, is it is your responsibility to go into the app service as a web app and to scale it manually. When you see that traffic is coming more and more, it is your responsibility to go and scale up. But if you are going with some standard, premium or isolated plans, then you will be having an option of custom scaling as well, with which you can just set some conditions and the rules to scale up your virtual machines and scale out your virtual machines and scale in whenever the traffic is getting lower. Okay. So now let's see one sample how to do that in, okay. So this is my web app, right? So I'm just going to show you how you can scale up, okay? So if you see here, there will be an option called scale out. Where is it? Okay. So you have an option called scale out, right? So if you go to the scale out, as this is a standard plan, you have both manual scaling and custom scaling as well. So manual scaling, you can scale up to 10 instances, as your standard plan is supported for up to 10 instances, right? So you can use 2, 3, 4, whatever, how much ever the virtual machines you want. You can do it manually as well. Or if you want to do a custom scaling, then you can just go ahead and set some metrics. If I go ahead, I'm not changing anything. If I go and add a rule or a condition here, so you can scale based on some metrics. This metric could be, this is my current resource, right? This is the current app service plan. This is my app service plan. Based on this, I can set conditions, or you have different options to set the conditions. You can set conditions based on your gateways or based on your storage queues, all those things. You can set the conditions. As of now, I'm going with the app service plan itself. So if my app service plan CPU is going beyond, some say greater than or 70% for a duration of 10 minutes, then, okay, this is just a average. So then increase my instance, I mean increase the virtual machine instance by 1. So it will create one more virtual machine if this condition is satisfied. Okay, so I'm just going ahead and created one. So like this, if you go ahead, instance limit, if you have one, and you can choose maximum how much limit you want to do in this custom one. So if I'm going maximum 2 can be created, maximum 3, I can choose up to 10 because my standard plan will support only up to 10. Okay, so likewise, if I'm choosing, let's say 2 or 3, so you have mentioned the condition, whenever your app service plan's CPU percentage is going beyond 70%, then increase one more virtual machine in the underlying infrastructure, so that whatever the coming traffic from your web app should be distributed accordingly. Okay, you can go ahead and say this is your custom plan which you are doing it. In the same way, you can go ahead and create your scale in option as well. Okay, let's say if you want to add scale in as well, you can just go ahead and add a rule saying whenever my app service is getting below 40%, something like that, so you can decrease the count, I mean decrease the virtual machine instance count by 1. Okay, likewise you can add this one, and the minimum is 1, so you can decrease up to 1 virtual machine. You can save this as well. So whenever you are mentioning, I mean whenever you have updated these scaling conditions, so whenever your traffic to access your web page is increasing beyond the 70%, then it will go ahead and automatically create one virtual machine to serve your customers, likewise for the better performance. Okay, so when it will get updated, I mean when it scale up, so in the virtual machines you have direct you can directly go ahead and see whether the another virtual machine has created or not, right? But this is web app. You can't, you don't have any visibility in related to your particular, I mean, underlying infrastructure, right? Where you can check about the scaling is, you can check here the instance count. This the instance count as of now is 1. So if the traffic is going more than 70%, then if it has created, if this web app has created another instance of the infrastructure, I mean another instance of the virtual machine, then you will find count 2. So whatever the count, how many instances you have, that will be shown here. Okay, and also you will get some messages here saying that, okay, instance auto scaling of instance 1 has started and succeeded, and the auto scaling of instance 2 has started and it has succeeded, something like that. Okay, and also if your traffic is getting low, then you will get a message saying that your traffic is getting low, so one virtual machine has been deleted and only the instances remaining is 2, and like something like that. Okay, so you will be getting messages when this auto scaling is actually happening. Okay, so this is the one of the thing. Okay. So now we have seen this one, right? So now the next thing I want to tell you about this Azure Web App is the backup services. So this Azure Web App actually by itself, it is having a capability for the, it is having a features of backup also. So whatever the application code you are hosting onto the web app or the database that is the underlying database that is associated with your web application, that can be backed up if you want. Okay, so this is my, okay, so this is my first app, right? So I want a backup for my application. Whatever the application I am hosting here, whatever the database that is associated with this, I want a backup for my application, right? So what I can do is in the app service itself, if you scroll down, there is an option called, where is backup? Okay, backups. Okay, so there is an option called backup. So you can go ahead and take the backup of your application. So before doing that, you should be having one storage account. Let's go ahead and create one storage account. Okay, where I'm going to back up my code and the database. So I'm just going to create one. Let's say I'm going to give a unique name, storage. So I'm giving some unique name as a storage backup, and I'm going to create my backup also in the central US. I don't want geo redundancy, so I'm going with the local redundancy. You go next. So I'm not changing anything. I'm just going ahead and creating one sample storage account. Okay, it's running the validation. Now create. Okay, so meanwhile it gets created. Let's go and create one more web app. Okay, I am going to use my this second web app as a backup web app for my first one. Okay, so now if I go home, if I go and create one more web app and create, this time I'm going to give us, this is my second web app, backup something. Okay, so this is my second web app, which is I'm going to use as a backup. Okay, I'm going to choose the same thing. I'm going to run stack. I'm going to choose the same Windows. So can you see here, when the first time, when we have created the web app for the first time, it has automatically created one Azure app service, app service plan, right? If you can see here, it has automatically taken the same app service. It has not created a new one, because do you know why? Because whatever the underlying infrastructure we are choosing here, right, that is also Windows, right? So if you are going to go with a Linux, then it will go create other one, but at the same as we are going with the same Windows one, we don't need another app service plan. So I'm going with the same as app service plan, which is standard one. Okay. Now go to the deployment. I don't want it continuous deployment, so I'm just disable. No, I don't want application insights, tag, review and create. Okay, so now let's go and take the backup of our first application. Let me check if storage account has created. Okay, so our storage account is successfully created here, and this is our web app. Where is my first web app? Okay. So this is the first web app which I have created, which I want to take the backup now, right? So in the first web app, I'm going to go to backups option. Okay. Okay, my resources deployed. Okay, now if you go to the backups, you can see there is an error message saying backup is not configured. Click here to configure backup for your application. Okay, I want to configure the backup now. So I'm clicking on that. So it has taken me to the next page. Here I need to choose which storage and to which app I want to take a backup. Okay, so storage is not configured. So can you see this is my storage account which I have created, right? So I'm just creating one part of my container. I mean, one part in the storage account. And I'm taking it as first web app data something, first web app. Okay. So I'm creating one part in my storage account. I want to store all the backups pertaining to my first app in the storage account in this container. Okay. So now so this is my one, select. Okay, I have selected my storage account, the container which I have designed for my backing up my first application. Okay, so now backup schedule. So if you turn it on, it will ask you when do you want to take the backup. You can take it for every 1 day. You can take it for every 1 hour. Likewise, if you want for how many hours do you want to take the backup, or to how many days you want to take the backup, you can design here. Okay, as of now, I'm just keeping it as 1 day, and you can mention the retention dates, how many days you want to. So it's up to you. And if you want to take the backup of your application database as well, you can go ahead and select here. Okay, as of now, I don't want, so I'm just saving these settings. Okay, so if you can see here, it is in progress. It means that whatever the backup, I mean, the first applications is getting backed up in my storage account, okay, which I have created, and in that I have created one partition for this, right? So it's getting stored in that storage account. Okay, so it's still in progress. If you go refresh, it will actually take few moments, but as of now, I don't have anything much in my first app, right? I just have created one default.html, so it doesn't have much. So it has taken very less amount of time. And also you can see the size of the backup, it's just 0.07 MB. So it has created very fast. So now whatever your application is, it has been backed up here in your storage account. Now you want to restore it. So let's say click on the restore. So source, this app backup, where I want to restore. Destination, you can choose either if you want to create a new app, you can choose that one, or if you have any existing web app, you can back up into that as well. So I'm just going to, okay. This is my second web app which I have created for the backup, right? So I am choosing this one, second web app backup. I'm not changing anything. Okay, so I'm just going to click on here. So what I have done overall is I have created one storage account. I am taking a backup of my first application, and that is going to be stored in my storage account. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I have done is I have configured a restore backup. It means that I'm telling this web app in which web app is I'm going to use as a backup resource. Like whatever we have in this first web app that is going to be stored in the storage account, I need to, if I want to monitor, if I want to see what's actually it's looking like, the web server which I want to use, that will be used, I mean that will be done by my second web app which I have created, and that I am using here as my backup server. right? Let it validate. It will take few minutes. So now restore is done. Okay. So my restore is done, right? So now I'm going to my second web app. Where is that? So I'm going to my second web app. If you remember, I have not gone to the second web app and I have not created any default HTML pages and I have not done anything here, right? I have just configured saying that whatever that is available in the first web app, let's get back up here and I can see whatever in the background. So now I'm choosing the URL of my second backup web app. Can you see? So whatever the current production of my first web app has got backed up into my second web app, and with the same URL of my second web app, I can navigate to my the page which is now currently in the production. Right? This is in regards to the web app. So these are the few things in related to the Azure Web App and Azure App Service. So now, let me go ahead, just delete this form. Yeah, so these are the topics. So what we have seen so far is we have seen what is the main advantage of having a web app and what are the advantages going with that. And also we have seen how to create, how you can create your logs and how you can check the live stream and how you can create your sample pages, or if it is in the production, how your developers can go ahead and create the web pages. And also we have seen how to create a different deployment slots, and once it is done, how you can swap the code or in one in one environment to the other environment for testing or to the production purposes. And also we have seen how you can take the backup and how you can store it in some other web app service. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to stop the recording as we have already passed our time. Let's see if anyone has any few questions, then let's close this session. Okay, I'm just going to delete this.